Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. And this time we are taking a look at the roster for the 2023 Vegas Eternal first season with the new branding and the final team from the Western region last season. Of course, the Western region is a little different next year with the LA Valiant moving back west and the Dallas Fuel moving to the Eastern region. So we will talk about the LA Valiant on Monday. As kind of the transitions move from west to east, but we end this first batch of 2022 rosters in the Western region with the Vegas Eternal, who last year, in their final season as the Paris Eternal, finished with a pretty disappointing 1-23 record and a minus 56 differential. It was a very poor season from this team last year, completely rebuilt in the middle of the season. So all things considered, a rough season last year that ended up kind of leading to the roster that they have this year. Pretty much everybody that they have on the team now, they picked up last season with one exception. So let's take a look at the 2023 roster for the Vegas Eternal and see what they will be working with next season, or this season, I guess. So, their roster, you can see it here. They have Dove, Luke Mino, Arakatak, and Malthol, who all return from last season, and Vulcan, the only new addition to this team. They also have a new head coach with Empress, who formerly coached most of these players, if not all of them, when they played for Odyssey. Now, all of these players come in some way, shape, or form from that Odyssey roster. Most recently, that roster, consisted of players like Luke Mino, Rakatak, and Malthol. They all kind of came directly from Odyssey to the Paris Eternal last year. Dove spent some time on some other teams like Ardor and Solaris before he joined the Paris Eternal. Obviously, Vulcan last year spent some time with the New York Excelsior, and then went back to Odyssey, and then came up from there. So pretty much everyone else, though, came from Odyssey most recently to join the Eternal. So let's jump in and let's take a look at these players more kind of specifically, and let's start with what I think is probably the strength of this roster, which is the support line. Luke Mino and Rakatak. Two players who honestly have been kind of on the radar as potential kind of Overwatch League signings for a while now. Luke Mino and Rakatak, long time playing with each other. If you look at kind of their history, they both joined Odyssey originally back in 2020, both at the same time in kind of July of 2020. They spent time there until January. They both rejoined a few months later, and then they kind of went their separate ways for a little bit, spent some time on different rosters and then rejoined again, and eventually ended up back on Odyssey. Luke Mino played in the past with some of the guys, Dark Mode NA, Redbird Esports, Maryville Esports, played some collegiate for a little bit. So these are two guys who've been around for a long time. They're both very, very successful, very, very good. You go to their Wikipedia pages, lots of first and second place finishes for both of these guys, third place finishes, stuff like that. So they have been, at the top level, generally speaking, of the NA contender scene for a while, especially after the kind of disband of American Tornado, and even sometimes coming out on top of American Tornado in some of those kinds of tournaments. So definitely a very good team here with the kind of support line. Two guys have been around. They've been doing it for a while. They're pretty flexible, all things considered. Luke Mino is going to be your main flex support. He's going to play your BAP. He's going to play your Zan, your Ana, stuff like that, your Kiriko. Rakatak is your primary main support, so he's going to be your Brig, your Mercy, your Lucio. But he does have some flexibility, stuff like Batiste. So I don't think it's the greatest support line in the world, but I think this is the strength of this roster. I think they are both very, very good. I think that they both understand what they are. They understand where they kind of fit into their team, and I think that they're both very, very solid at the role. absolutely deserving of a spot in the Overwatch League. I think that they are, especially if you want to talk about players from the Western region, from North America, I would argue that the best North American support duo is OG Ultraviolet. The second best is Luke Rack Attack, right? Like, to me, those are the staples of NA contenders, NA support lines. They are the two best. And so I think they are a very, very good addition to this team. They're a very solid duo who I have pretty high expectations for. I think that they'll be pretty solid for this team. And I definitely think that we are going to see a pretty good look out of this support line going into this season. Last season, I don't put too much stock in what happened last season because they joined halfway through the season. They didn't have access to Overwatch 2 until they joined. So there's a lot of reasons why I feel like there's a lot to kind of ignore from last year. All in all, I think they are a very solid duo. I think they are kind of the backbone of this team. They're the two players that I have the most faith in as things stand right now. The DPS for this team, you have Dove and Malthul. Both of them played together, of course, on this team last season. They've played together in the past. You know, that's their history. Malthul is going to be more of your flex DPS guy, stuff like Genji, Pharah, Mei, stuff like that. And Dove, we saw last year, pretty solid hit scan player, so stuff like Widow, Ashe, Cassidy, play some Tracer, stuff like that. So a decent duo. I don't know how much hit scan DPS Malthul has played in his career. I don't know if it's something that he feels comfortable on, if it's something that he's decent on or not. I don't really know the full extent of his hit scan prowess. Obviously, last year this team had Wub, who I thought was a very solid kind of player that can play some hit scan, also a little bit more flexible as well. But in general, Dove, definitely your solid hit scan player. When you need hit scan, he's the go-to guy, and we'll see kind of what Malthul brings from the kind of flex DPS role in terms of hit scan. Like I said, I'm not familiar with his hit scan play, but as far as I know, he is mostly going to be giving you your traditional kind of flex DPS types of roles. I don't believe there are any chances of them signing another DPS player to this team unless it just really doesn't work and they have to kind of replace one like they did last season. I wouldn't say there's zero chance of it happening, but I think it is definitely something interesting to kind of consider potentially. There are some rumors that who their sixth player is, but it's not rumored to be a damage dealer. So I definitely think there are some potential limitations to this DPS duo. Like I said, I don't know what to expect fully out of the full kind of flexibility here with this duo. I think in the right metas, they'll be fine, but I definitely don't expect them to kind of be aiming and competing with kind of your best of the best damage duos and trios like what you have in Atlanta or San Francisco or Houston. I don't expect them to be at that level, but I definitely think that they at least have the ability to run enough of what you want out of this team to kind of feel pretty comfortable and confident in their ability to at least win you some games and get you into some pretty close matches as time goes on. The final player that has been announced for this roster is Vulcan. Like I said, he's the only player from this team who did not play with this roster in the 2022 season of the Overwatch League. He obviously spent some time with New York Excelsior, didn't play. He was just there as kind of an emergency backup player in the event that they couldn't get Kellen in. Then he went back and he played for Odyssey. There was actually an interview that Yiska put out a couple of days ago with the Paris Eternal or Vegas Eternal. The Vegas Eternal players and staff, where Avala confirmed that they had actually approached Vulcan. They wanted him on the team last year, but Vulcan, for personal reasons, declined that offer, which I expected that to be the case. I was pretty sure that they would have approached Vulcan, and he probably was the one who said no. So we do know for a fact that they wanted him last year, but opted to not get him because he went elsewhere and did other things. Vulcan's a solid tank. He's not the most well-rounded. He's mostly known for his off-tank, but he is very, very good, and he's someone who I'm absolutely higher on for this particular roster than I think I was for Krawi last year. I think that Vulcan has the history with these guys. He knows these guys better, and I think he was the best tank in the NA contender scene last year. He was far and away, I think, the best. And so to me, him joining this team is not a surprise at all. There's some other good guys that could kind of, compete with him. But he was among the best for sure in all of the kind of recent seasons of NA contenders. There are some rumors that they may be adding another tank player. I don't really know how much they're even rumors at this point in time. They're about as confirmed as rumors can be without being like a fully officially confirmed. But there are rumors that they are also adding Rhino to this team, who is a main tank player. So he's going to give you stuff like Arisa, Winston, Reinhardt, Wrecking Ball. So there's rumors about him joining this team. He is 17. I saw a tweet recently between like him and Avala, basically saying like high school getting in the way of him being in that kind of interview that he was doing. It could all be a long play. It could all be a nice, fun little joke that they're playing. But I do think, generally speaking, I think Rhino is probably the person they're going to add as their sixth. I think that makes their team a little more well-rounded. Generally speaking, I think that when you look at the way the league has gone, I think having two tanks is probably the smartest thing you can do. I think that having DPS flexibility is very, very important. But generally speaking, I feel like you need to have that flexibility on the tank role because tank is so important. And I think damage, while having flexibility is important, I think generally speaking, teams can manage to at least find success if they have their damage players maybe a little off meta. But like if it's a Wrecking Ball meta and you can't play Wrecking Ball, you're just going to lose, right? If it's a Winston meta, you can't play Winston, you're just going to lose. So I do think in general, Rhino makes the most sense to be the sixth player to this team. I'm almost positive he's going to be added. So assume that is going to be the full roster. Luke Mino, Ragattack as the supports, Dove, Malthol as the damage, and Vulcan and Rhino as the tanks. I think that is a pretty solid roster that really does cover most of what you would need in the 2023 season. I think assuming Rhino is the addition to this roster to round it out, my only real concern in terms of like flexibility or coverage would be a third DPS. I would like to see them add a third damage dealer if that is what the roster is. But I like what they have in terms of tanks and supports. I don't really think you need to go out for another support. I think Lukamina Ragattack can play everything you need them to play, kind of can play that double flex support if they need it, but also can give you very strong kind of main support flex support play. With Rhino and Vulcan, you cover the plethora of tanks, and so I don't really think you need to add to that. And so that point in time really comes down to how well are they going to look damage-wise. I don't expect him to make any additions outside of Rhino. That's not really what this team has been in the past. They usually go pretty slim. Last year they only had 6 players. They didn't have any subs outside of damage. I think that they probably are going to roll 6 players again. That's just kind of the way this team has been going over the past kind of couple of years. So we'll see what happens, I suppose, when we hopefully get an announcement for Rhino. But all in all, I do think this team should easily have a better result than they had last season, right? This specific roster did not win a game last year. The kind of original Eternal roster were the ones who managed to get a win last year. And so this specific iteration of the team has not found a win yet. Obviously, there's fewer games next season or this season. So, one win out of 16 is different than one win out of 24. But I don't think this is a team that's just going to be bad every game they show up. I think that when you look around the Western region, you have teams like New York and Vancouver and the LA Valiant. I think they can compete with those teams. I also think that they can compete with the likes of London and Washington and even like the LA Gladiators, right? In certain metas, I think that there are definitely places where this team has the ability to compete and win games against some of those middle-level teams. I don't expect this team to be getting wins off of the top of the league, like your San Francisco Shocks, your Houston Outlaws, your Atlanta Reigns. Like, that's a very tough ask. And I'm recording this before the Pro-Am starts, so, who knows. But they do play Atlanta in the Pro-Am. So we'll see this team go up against Atlanta in the Pro-Am, and we'll see how good they are. but they also go up against the LA Valiant and the London Spitfire and Saints. So I think we'll have a good idea by the end of the Pro-Am, kind of where Vegas sits and kind of among some of their similar teams in kind of their group. But I think this team will be better than they were last year. I know there's people critical of this team for adding some of the players or bringing pretty much the entire roster back from last year. But this is what they were building towards. They were building towards the 2023 season. So, yeah, they probably would benefit from, one or two extra players here on the roster. But I think as a whole, they look good. I think they're going to be fine. I think they'll be competitive at the very least. And so I think that there is no reason, in my opinion, to look at this team and go, oh, they're going to be like easy bottom team in the Western region. I just don't think that's the case. I think right now, I think definitively their roster looks better than the LA Valiant roster, at least what we know about the LA Valiant roster. Outside of that, like I said, this team will compete with the likes of New York, with the likes of Vancouver, Washington, London, even potentially. Like, that's where I think they are at right now. They're not an incredible roster. They're not an elite level roster. But I certainly think that this roster has the ability to definitely kind of have that London-style bounce back from what they did last year. London was a very good team last year. They had very good coaching. I'm very high on Empress. I think she's a great coach. The players respect her as a coach. They like her as a coach. They work well with her as a coach. And so for me, this is one of those teams that is in position to potentially have that nice bounce back performance going into next season. But we'll see what happens when the season actually begins here soon. That's all for me on this Vegas Eternal roster. Very, very interesting. Very curious to hear your thoughts on this team. So let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this roster. If you think it's going to be better than last year, if you think this roster still is not it, let me know in the comments down below. We're going to have a nice little discussion about it down there. And if you enjoyed this video and want to like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing, as next week we are going to finish off the Western region with the LA Valiant and move into looking at the Eastern region rosters. And of course, it's already happening by the time you're watching this video, but the Pro-Am's here. So watch the Pro-Am, support the Tier 2 teams that are competing in this, while also getting the first look at some of the Overwatch League teams. It's really cool. It's really awesome. I'm really hoping everyone's enjoying it so far. It hasn't started yet for me, so I don't know if I'm enjoying it yet or not, but I'm sure I will be. Anyway, that's it for me for today. Thank you all so much once again. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.